During the last few days, we were discussing how with the practice of the four Satipatthana, foundations of mindfulness, in a sense, the practice of mindfulness, Sati, one is also practicing the three trainings, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. And the corollary to this is that without the practice of this mindfulness, we will be losing the practice of the three trainings of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, and thus suffer loss in our life. Today we shall discuss to what extent the consequences will be without the practice of mindfulness, Sati. When the mind is weak and immature. If the mind is weak, then one will always be a loser if one encounters stronger states, stronger elements. And if the mind is immature, one will not be able to develop stamina to be able to withstand the ups and downs of life in all aspects. So as a human being, we need to purify and develop our mind and insight so that it reaches strength and maturity and gain the upper hand of the impurities which have been always on the upper hand. So if one cultivates wisdom, Panya, as much as one cultivates Panya, one will be able to withstand the conditions, good and bad conditions, and not be moved by gladness or sadness, elation or dejection whenever we encounter agreeable, disagreeable objects. The mind will become balanced. But in order to do that, to achieve a balanced mind, one cannot achieve this with mere practice of reflection, or once even if one takes refuge in the Supreme Being, that Supreme Being also cannot help you. Or if you travel here and there just to get your mind out of this sadness or gladness, such activities will not help you. So if the mind is not well developed, you will be relieved only for momentarily, and you always come back to square one. So it is necessary, one should understand that it is necessary for everybody to purify and cultivate one's mind and insight so as to have a assured life, assurance of satisfying life. Unless we mold our life or mind with a suitable method and leaving the mind uncontrolled, unrestrained, leaving the mind as it is in the natural state without cultivation, then we will be subject to ignorance, not knowing the truth, knowing in the wrong way. And then this will lead to attachment. So attachment about things seen, pleasurable sight, pleasurable sound, and so on, if one does not see them or does not practice or be mindful with the practice of Satipatthana, the Kilesa current is bound to flow continuously without knowledge. That means the ignorance, there will be darkness. And this darkness also has two kinds, not knowing the truth and knowing in the wrong way. Thinking that all these pleasures of senses, seeing good things, hearing good things and all and so on, are the best things that you can get in your life. If you think that they are good, they are pleasurable, then you will crave for them and get hooked on these things, pleasurable things. leading to darkness and attachment all along your life, all along our life, inherently. These two unskillful inherent mental states, as we have already mentioned, avijja and tanha, tend to weaken the mind so that the mind becomes small and tender, that means immature. So we have to strengthen it with the practice of these elements which can enlarge the mind so that it becomes large from smallness. The best method is to be mindful all the time. As much as one activates mindfulness, there will be no tanha and other impurities entering our stream of consciousness to weaken our mind. So we have to cultivate these powerful, positive mental states such as virya, energy, sati, mindfulness, samadhi, concentration, and also this faith. At this stage, clear faith, not yet the trusting faith, which can strengthen and enlarge the mind. So we are trying to cultivate these positive mental states so that they enter or they overwhelm our stream of consciousness, especially this mindfulness sati, to apply constantly so that to purify our thought, word and deed. As much as one activates our mindfulness, we will be substituting these weakening elements, negative mental states such as tanha. Tanha will not, attachment will not enter our stream of consciousness. And so also this aversion, another negative mental state, also cannot enter our stream of consciousness. Because of the exertion of energy, there will be no slackness or no lack of exertion of energy. There will be no sluggishness. And as we activate our mind, the mind becomes calm and there will be no distraction, no scattering, no remorse. So initially, we have faith, we practice with faith and enthusiasm. Therefore, there will be no doubt and uncertainty. And in this way, these energies can strengthen the mind so that it will not become weak. So in this way, we can empower ourselves with these positive mental states such as virya and so on. In this way, our mind becomes strong from weakness and mature from immaturity. Now, if the mind is in such a situation, we can cultivate our mind with the practice of samatha bhavana, which is made up of these three positive mental states, namely virya, sati, samadhi. In a sense, if we are able to cultivate, exert virya continuously, so as to activate mindfulness continuously, leading to the deepening of the levels of insight continuously, then by cultivating these three positive mental states continuously, this is called samatha bhavana, the tranquility practice, then we will be able to develop and purify our mind. As much as our noting mind is concurrent with the object of observation, then we are bound to gain insight, beginning with the discernment of mind and body, progressing through the different levels of insight knowledge until we reach the maturity of the practice. In this way, we have to mold our life, we have to cultivate our mind. If we do this systematically, the practice systematically, then our mind is bound to become powerful, pure and well developed. And as much as we cultivate knowledge, the mind will become mature from the stage of weakness. If we leave our mind uncontrolled, leaving it in its natural state without cultivating with this method of satipatthana, vipassana bhavana, then we may grow old, physically, but the mind will remain as immature and small and weak as ever. Say for instance, from 25 years old, although the age is 25, the mind may not be that old. And one becomes 50 years, reaches the age of 50. But if one has not cultivated our mind with this practice of Satipatthana, Vipassana, Bhavana, then the mind will remain as tender and small and weak and young as ever. So though physically we grow old, the mind will remain small and weak, and we may reach the age of 70, but if we don't cultivate our mind in this way, then although physically we come of age, we become old, the mind will remain as small and weak as ever. So this knowledge means not conceptual knowledge, but the intuitive knowledge or empirical knowledge gained through your own experience to discern the realities of mind and body and the causal mode and the universal characteristics of existence. So knowing these things in stages until we reach the maturity of the path and consciousness, that is the practice of Panya Bhavana, wisdom practice. If one has not done that, though physically one may grow old, the mind will not be developed, the mind will remain immature as ever. So if we have not developed our mind with samatha method, tranquility method, then the mind will not become developed, it will remain small and weak. And if we have not molded our mind with the practice of insight or vipassana, then our mind also will not become immature, become mature, it will remain immature. So just let us try to analyze such state of affairs, or even you can just analyze your own mind without any sympathetic consideration. Such a person, a person who has a weak mind, immature, undeveloped mind, will become very sensitive, react very soon whenever one encounters agreeable, desirable objects. Then one will be a victim to, or a slave to greed, craving, lobha, raga, very easily and gradually. This may go up, develop by degrees, even reaching the extreme hand or extreme state of this greed. One becomes very reactive, very sensitive, because one's mind is weak. And when one encounters undesirable, disagreeable objects, easily one will react again, become sensitive. There will be disappointment, disagreement, and react very quickly. So because of this reaction, sensitivity, whenever one encounters agreeable Aitaramana objects, and Aitaramana, disagreeable objects, there will be this greed or hatred, as the case may be, arising in degrees. So in this way, when one encounters disagreeable objects, there will be disappointment and aversion simmering in the mind. The reason is because the mind is weak. Although physically one grows old, the mind is not developed like the physical body. So in respect of these Aitaramana, agreeable objects, and Aitaramana, disagreeable objects, one becomes responsive, sensitive, react very quickly. Like this case of sapling, small plant or budding fruit, because they are very weak in the initial stage of development, they are unable to withstand all these touch or this extreme temperatures like heat, cold and so on, because they are very sensitive, because they are very weak. they cannot withstand even a slight touch because of the lack of enough strength. So just compare with your own mind, state of your mind. When this sapling or the fruiting tree can absorb a nutriment like the soil and weather, water and so on, sunlight from the surrounding, it becomes stronger and stronger, has become developed, grows bigger and bigger, stronger and stronger, because of also the nurturing, the effect of nurturing. It can, or they will be able to repulse all these adverse conditions like heat, cold and so on. And same thing with the mind. If the mind is energized, fertilized with necessary elements, positive mental states every day, then it will be able to repulse all these adverse conditions. Otherwise, if the mind is left uncontrolled, left as it is in its natural state, then it will not have enough strength. So when it encounters agreeable, disagreeable objects, it will become very sensitive, react very quickly. Maybe before you came to the retreat, you know the state of your mind by yourself. Even after you have come to the retreat and practicing for some time, your sensitivity may still remain with you. Suppose somebody passes by while you are sitting quietly, having a nice mindfulness, noting every object, and there may be some conversation even in a low voice. The responsibility of the yogi, the task of the yogi is to just note as soon as one hears as hearing, whether the voice or the sound is agreeable or disagreeable. One's duty is to just note it instantaneously. So if one can connect with that object instantly, then the hearing will be just noted as hearing and no more. You'll stop there. If instead one lacks this right attention and become reactive, open one's eyes and judge and comment others because they disagree, because such actions of other people are not agreeable to you, then you'll be very sensitive and that will disturb you. The root cause is because you have not cultivated your mind with the required empowering elements. That's why your mind remains as weak as ever. So the lesson is that you are not able to withstand all these onslaught of the good and bad objects. That you still need to cultivate your mind, and you are not well developed as yet. Your mind is not well developed as yet. So you have to, you know that you still need to strengthen your mindfulness. In the beginning, when one has not cultivated enough concentration, the sound may serve as a great hindrance, and this is from his own experience when he was practicing on the following year of the establishment of this Mahasi Meditation Center. A lot of construction work was going on. There are not many buildings as yet, so he had to practice in one building, sharing with a snoring elder monk who always fell asleep at about 8 o'clock in the evening. And he could not, it was very disturbing for him because he was not able to concentrate his mind. So of course he was not angry, but he was slightly disappointed. And of course he could not also report to the teacher. And he just thought about this, reflected upon this, to have a right attention and to note this snoring sound. So he did it. So he knew that if the sound or object is agreeable, there will be liking, wanting, desiring, And if the object is undesirable, disagreeable, then there will be aversion. So he would not let these two unwholesome mental states invade you. You will not be the victim of these unwholesome mental states. So this was his decision. So what he did was he noted the mind and noted the sound as it came into his ears. He was battling with the sound. Sometimes the sound was gained the upper hand, sometimes his mindfulness. So in this way he was able to battle with the snoring sound without giving in, and thus as he was able to be concurrent with the sound, the noting object to be noted, in this case the sound, and noting as hearing, then the sound slowly moved away from him, fading into a distance. So he was sleeping only about 5 or 6 feet from him, and the sound faded away gradually as he was able to note successfully. So how much is note? So one should not be disturbed by another's actions or movements. If one is still affected by another or other persons, then one can judge that one needs something. So instead of seeing others' faults, if the sound is disagreeable, something you don't like, instead of reacting it, then you should reflect upon yourself that because you cannot repulse this sound, or you cannot note it off, that means I need something, I have some shortcomings, and I need to cultivate my mind. I have not cultivated my mind enough. So in this way, by just hearing, one should be able to note so that noting mind becomes continuous without any aversion, either in respect of disagreeable object or likes and attachment about agreeable sound or objects. In one's life, one is bound to encounter agreeable, disagreeable objects, likes and dislikes about these good and bad objects, desirable, undesirable objects. And one is bound to be invaded. One is bound to be overwhelmed by these kinds of objects. And as for the yogis, while they in their practice, they are like a person who is traveling a river journey on a boat. It is necessary to mind your own boat, own business, instead of worrying about other things. In the boat, the boatman is most important. He or she has the maximum responsibility, and you have to the boatman has to mind his or her business, or just tell him what to do. Instead of that, if you are just criticizing or commenting or judging the master or the rider is defective or things like that, instead of judging and commenting unnecessary things, then you will be disturbed, and your boat will succumb to the storm and waves. So also with the yogis, if you are judging, commenting others instead of minding your own business, that means minding your own mindfulness practice, then you are bound to be overwhelmed or invaded or attacked by these kilesa waves. So whatever happens in other people, when one encounters these conditions, ups and downs of conditions, it is necessary to control yourself with. When as a young monk he was practicing at the Mahasi Meditation Center, the teacher knew his ability and asked him to practice without sleeping, not lying down, but to do walking, sitting and walking. That means 24 hours, not sleeping at night, nor sleeping in the daytime. So he practiced in accordance with that, and after 10 o'clock at night, a lot of yogis go back to their room, some slept and some continue to sit. And at that time he happened to be walking fast by a room where one yogi was sitting. And of course, as the teacher had instructed, he did 3 types of walking: fast walking, medium walking, and slow walking, 20 minutes each. So he walked silently, but since night time it was very silent, and even a slightest sound can become enlarged and could disturb other people. So although he was walking mindfully, the yogi who was sitting in the room seemed disturbed. He came out, he was angry, and he held him by the ropes, and then he was about to hit him, but he apologized. He was sympathized with this, and then he knew that this kind of sound can be very, it can affect, be silent in the silent night. So he walked mindfully, and then he would not disturb him. So he was not angry at that time. So for that person who was angry, it shows that he had not developed his mind, and that's why also he continued to walk mindfully and not to make any noise. Breaking the monk's disciplines. And of course he was not studying purposely, but he was knowing it, was conscious about that. So he was thinking, how can one practice without sustaining the vinyas? So he was judging others so that he wouldn't make any progress. He was very doubtful. And doubt, the teacher said that if you are doubtful, your practice can be disrupted. The practice of meditation is just like traveling on a riverine journey. By boat, you have to mind your own boat, own business, instead of commenting, judging other boats or other people. So one should not be disturbed by other people. One should mind one's own business, namely the practice of mindfulness. So he, instead of judging others, he practiced by himself, minded his own business in accordance with the teacher's instructions. So what he means here is not to make judgments or comments about what you hear or sees. And he has made a mistake himself, so you should not repeat this mistake again. And all you have to do is just control yourself with mindfulness of every arising to repulse your likes and dislikes. Then the problems will be solved. So the practice is to be able to overcome these likes and dislikes about agreeable, disagreeable objects, and to connect with the object instantly as soon as one sees, hears, tastes, touch, and so on. And this is your only task and nothing else. This is your immediate task and nothing else. So if you're able to do that, you'll be able to overcome these conditions, ups and downs of conditions, good and bad conditions. And in this way you'll be able to cultivate and develop your mind. So in this way, if you're able to purify and develop the mind, you'll be able to withstand the ups and downs of life, and with the cultivation of the knowledge, you can develop your stamina. So you need these two things, two qualities, namely the power, repulsive power and withstanding power, to be able to withstand and to be able to repulse. So these two things are necessary that makes up the quality of a yogi. So if one practices continuously to purify and develop the mind, every second, noting every rising object, overcoming difficulties with the stepped up energy, second stage of energy, to overcome sluggishness and so on, then you will be another stage higher yogi, one stage higher yogi. And in this way, if you are able to cultivate insight knowledge by stages, then with that practice you become more and more worthy, real yogi. So the immediate benefit, let alone other benefits, is to be able to withstand, overcome these likes and dislikes, or be able to withstand elation, dejection about agreeable, disagreeable objects, and be able to possess balanced attitude so that one's life will become equipoised. That is the immediate benefit of the practice. Now the benefit of the yogi, the quality of the yogi, has been given in the text like this, that if one is able to exert energy, first initial launching energy in the beginning of the practice, to be able to steady one's mindfulness, attention on the object, and then when one encounters difficulties like sluggishness, unbearable, excruciating sensations and all that, one needs to boost up, step up one's second stage energy. That is the second stage energy to overcome difficulties. After that, one has to define one's goal. What is the one's goal? Is one's goal to realize the stage of sanctity in his very life? Then, towards that goal, one should boost up the progressive energy to realize that goal. So, practicing, being able to exert, practice by exerting these three types of energies is what makes a yogi. The most effective method to uproot these two unwholesome mental states of avijja, tanha, ignorance and attachment or craving is none other than the practice of satipatthana. So if one is able to do that in the most effective way, one is bound to realize the maximum benefit. It will bring about the maximum and best benefit. This satipatthana, practice of satipatthana, gives full assurance to cultivate one's mind and insight. So with this goal, we will all be able to practice with the exertion of the three stages of energy. Energy.